O'Hare on the O'Hare campus. Again, everybody, I hope you're doing fantastic. I hope everybody's having a great day. As usual, again, Short Fuse Fridays. It's the short show. At the end of the week, we break down the quick news for you guys and answer some of your fan questions at the same time. Guys, we had a lot of news happen this week. You know, we were able to get to some of it on Monday. We weren't able to get to all of it, but I wanted to kind of break down some more of the bigger news that kind of took place for what we had for the week. So I just wanted to kind of go through that because certainly some more interesting stuff has happened here in the city of Chicago. And of course, along with that, again, we got some more fan questions answering for the NBA in particular as well. So we will get to those too, ladies and gentlemen. But if you want to see us streaming anymore, you guys can always catch us, of course, every Monday and every Friday when we do have the chance. We will be going live, so you guys can catch us there, where we are obviously talking about sports, and that's every Monday about 10 o'clock, give or take, and every Friday, usually about 10 o'clock, give or take. Sorry. There's, again, mini applause is happening from the back every once in a while, so. Yes, I can still hear it. It's very faint, but I can hear it. It's like the applause that's in the distance I can hear. Sorry. You guys can always find us, of course, on YouTube and on Twitch. That's youtube.com/xbombsports and twitch.tv/xbombsports. If you guys want to check out any more of our stuff as well, too, and follow us, we are on all the social media stuff, at XBombSports on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can follow us all there as well. And if you have any questions or comments you guys, of course, want to send to us, like we do answer here every Friday and possibly every Monday when the season starts to slow down with sports, it's, of course, xbsportsofficial@gmail.com if you guys want to ask us any questions, anything like that, too. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we're just going to jump right into it because we got a lot to talk about here. So, obviously, Chicago has had a lot of big breaking news, and I'm sure many of you are aware that the Bears have kind of been on a downward spiral. It has not looked good, and we certainly kind of talked a little bit about that on Monday, but considering what news has been breaking out over the last couple of days, I thought it would be good to kind of talk about what kind of a season the Bears have had, because the only way I could really describe it is quite the whirlwind type of a season, right? This has just been a very unbearable, pun intended, situation. This is a team that's just barely standing. I could probably keep going and going, but I don't want to torture you guys. This season has obviously not been what Bears fans, and I'm sure the Bears themselves, have certainly wanted, right? This is a team that most individuals, I think, were looking at saying, well, you know, even if they're not exactly fantastic, they should at least be somewhat stable on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, they should be pretty good. I mean, the prediction was that this could be a team at their worst. They're 9-8 or 8-9, right? Something like that. At their best, they could be 11-6 or even better, right? With playoff intentions, and some even went further than that to say, oh, man, they could even possibly go and make the playoffs and go to the NFC Championship. And a couple of crazy people said, hey, Super Bowl, baby. And I certainly thought that was a little bit ludicrous. But, okay, well, you know, who am I to argue with the potential that people saw for the Bears, right? It's not a horrible season they could potentially have. They got a new quarterback, new receiver. They got a brand new wide receiver to match with that in Keenan Allen. I mean, they've got some new weapons. Defensively, they felt like they got better. They got more experienced. They were top of the league last year. So what would stop them this year from being able to be that top team in the NFL again, right? Well, a lot, obviously, because after the bye week, a lot of things have fallen apart. And one of the big parts that certainly has fallen, one of the pillars, I mean to say, that kind of fell, was the Bears deciding to fire offensive coordinator Shane Waldron, which was obviously a huge move that came after Matt Eberflus, the head coach, had a press conference, which that then translates to, okay, so where I was wrong, certainly, was I thought Shane Waldron would work with Caleb Williams, and obviously that didn't work. But then I also believed that Ryan Poles was the one that had gone out and hired the OC. Clearly, Matt Eberflus was the one that went and brought him onto the staff if he's the one that's firing Shane Waldron. So if that is the case, then it's pretty apparent then that there's major concerns to be had with the head coach, which was something that I was stressing to people well beforehand. I mentioned this on Monday. When it comes to Matt Eberflus and it comes to that whole situation with the Bears, right, and their head coach and everything that they've kind of been trying to sustain with the issues on the offense and the issues at quarterback and all that stuff, the big problems that really have kind of approached with this team especially, it's always seemed to kind of come back to coaching, right? I mean, it's been a catastrophe. It's been awful. It's been downright deplorable, the way that this team has been managed. I mean, Matt Eberflus, the head coach, was supposed to be, as he said, a CEO on the sidelines, right? He was supposed to be the man in control. I have the reins. I've got this thing. I got this. I can control how this car drives. You know, he thought he was the next Mario Andretti. He thought he was going to be the next, great race car driver that was going to be able to control the car around the track and be able to come out of this victorious. And maybe not first across the finish line, but hey, let's get a top 10 finish. Let's get a top 5 finish. Let's maybe even try to finish first. Let's do the best that we can. But it doesn't feel like they're doing that. And that ultimately is going to fall on his shoulders. You're the head coach. You're in charge. You should be managing this situation, but it doesn't feel like he is. I said this before. I believe I said it on Monday. I will say it again. He feels like Lovie Smith, where Lovie Smith was so matter-of-fact, laid back, quiet, Mr. Calm, and that's fine. But at some point, I would expect Matt Eberflus to raise a little bit more hell, be a little bit more energetic. The guy we saw in Indianapolis on Hard Knocks with the Colts, there were times where you saw that guy come through as the DC, and perhaps that's where he's usually at his best, and that's maybe what we should be discussing is, was he ever qualified to be a head coach? Who knows at this point? I would argue to say he wasn't, because during that same Hard Knocks where he was being the energetic guy, especially in the film room towards his defense, there were times where he was just, again, very laid back himself, matter of fact. He always felt like Lovie Smith. And I know there's Bears fans out there that are going to go, well, Lovie did win with the Bears. True, but he won during a time where you could win with great defense and you could win with a great ground game. This is not that time and place where you can take the risk of saying a really average quarterback like a Rex Grossman or a Eric Kramer or any guy like that can come in and just play this position and then just kind of manage the situation. That's not going to work in the NFL. Now, maybe this year, maybe it's a little bit different, possibly, but even still, the Ravens have Lamar Jackson who's thrown 24 touchdowns. As bad as maybe Patrick Mahomes has been at the beginning of the season, he's still had moments where he's looked like the best quarterback in the NFL. And then you have the Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen, who he just had his worst game this past week, really. And they still won. So there needs to be somebody to answer for this, and he's really going to be enemy number one, right? Or he should be. I mean, the whole talk was that this is the guy that the McCaskies put at the top of the list. Gave a list of polls, said, interview these guys for the head coaching job. He's at the top of the list. He's what we want. And they hired him. Ryan Poles clearly under some sort of orders or something like that. They hired him. And it hasn't worked at all. And now you have to question if this is hurting Caleb Williams, right? Because, oh my goodness, is everything coming out of the woodwork? I mean, first, the one big story that came out of this, which isn't really that big, but they finally let go of Nate Davis, which I feel like is an upgrade because the guy is playing so poor. Then you have this rumor that starts about Caleb Williams and these veterans who are saying, yeah, we kind of wanted Caleb Williams to be benched, right? And then the rumors coming out, actually, this is a rumor that was possibly started. It's a rumor that's a rumor that was started by the father of the backup quarterback, Tyson Bagent, in order to see Caleb possibly get benched so that Tyson could play, because the idea is, well, Caleb's not playing well, so maybe my son will do better. Even though I believe, what has Tyson Bagent done so far? He's thrown 3 touchdowns and like 9 interceptions. He's not been good. And this rumor, combined with all of the stuff about he's a bust, he's bad, he's terrible, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, all of this stuff is now stirring up the quarterback controversy, right? It is mixing that pot up of the Bears and just the nonsensical atmosphere that's being created, where people are now going to continue to question this kid, of course. And look, to some degree, is Caleb Williams justifiably to be blamed for the problems the Bears have had? Oh yeah. You can aim the guns at him and still say, part of the problem is still there, right? But I said this with Justin Fields. He should only be taking a partial part of the problems they have there. The overwhelming issues are coming from, I believe, the coaching staff, where Shane Waldron really was, by DJ Moore's own words, apparently too nice, too laid back, didn't push enough, didn't pressure them enough. Finally, they script plays, they looked really good, and apparently that's now gone out the window, and it's gotten him fired. Now you have to ask the question, has Caleb Williams been ruined? Have these rumors possibly gotten to him? He seems to be okay, and the veteran said, no, that was never the case. But you have to wonder, are the Bears now in a position where now they have to have this little, like, quote-unquote, as I would say, inquiry about the quarterback and go, did we pick the right guy? I think they did pick the right guy. But like every fan's now going to ask that question, did the Bears pick the right guy? Because, hey, Jaden Daniels has looked pretty good. Bo Nix is looking pretty good for Denver, and both of them are in playoff positions. Yeah, I understand that. And Drake May has looked a lot better as he gets more playing time. But what do all 3 of those guys have that clearly Caleb doesn't? They all have an identity. They all have a culture, or at least they have the building blocks of one that could be set, right? Gerard Mayo hires Alex Van Pelt, the guy who helped the Browns get to the AFC Championship as the OC there. It's a pretty nice hire to work with your young quarterback, right? That's the guy that helped get Baker Mayfield on track to look like an AFC Championship quarterback, to help the Cleveland Browns get to the AFC Championship. In Washington, Cliff Kingsbury had worked 1 year with Caleb Williams. That probably would have been a solid hire for the Bears, and I was all for that. But when he got hired by Washington, had Caleb's gone to Washington, I think it still works. But you got bigger Kyler Murray, and the guy that worked the best with Kyler Murray was Cliff Kingsbury. So now you get the guy that works best with Kyler Murray, you get bigger version of Kyler Murray, and when you know, it's working. Plus you have an identity and a culture built within Dan Quinn, and oh, by the way, you have new ownership as well that allows this to happen. Same thing with Denver. Denver got new ownership a few years ago, hired Sean Payton. Sean Payton brings identity, he brings culture, he brings a guy that can put an arm over the quarterback and say, I will teach you everything you need to know, and we will build this team the best way we can. They are working with junk personnel at the wide receiver spot, with Cortland Sutton, who's a guarantee or a glorified slot receiver, playing as a number 1. But the offensive line's doing great. Offensive line's doing really well for the Patriots. Offensive line's doing really well for the Commanders. Bears, terrible. Braxton Jones is in it. Darnell Wright, I think he still has something, but he's testing patience. Devin Jenkins is an animal, but he's all by himself inside. And you just had to cut Nate Davis because he wasn't doing anything. This all could be summed up really easy too. Like, what is the main source of the problem here? What did I just say? For the Commanders and for the Patriots. What really changed for both of those franchises? Now, Patriots, obviously nothing changed at that spot, but what changed for those two franchises that look like they're going in a solid direction? Ownership. It's ownership. So any complaints that people have, the blame needs to go to the very tip top of who runs this organization, the owners, the McCaskies. Where in that franchise, a 100-year-old woman, who, all the respect in the world to her, took over her father's franchise when his eldest son passed away, who was supposed to be the rightful heir to the Bears. They got to a Super Bowl, but she decided to suddenly change it in its image. Like, she got rid of the cheerleaders that were there in Chicago because she thought that cheerleading was a low form of women. She compared it to prostitution or something, or stripping, stuff like that. A stretch, I would say, but sure. And from there, it's just been constant changes along the line that have not really made a lot of sense, to the point where you have to ask yourself, does she even want to run the team? Does she really care about this? I know she loved her father. I know she loves her father's legacy, but does she really care about the team? Or does she care about the fact that this is just her father's legacy and she just wants to try to represent it the best way she can, but damn the football side as it be? Like, her son George is named after her father, George Halas. But George McCaskey is not George Halas. He doesn't have the same tenacity his grandfather did. He doesn't have that same push like his grandfather did. And quite frankly, I don't know if he likes football the way his grandfather did, who was a player, a coach, and an owner, and one of the guys who's a founding member of the NFL. You wonder, does this family want to have control of the Bears? Because my gut continues to tell me for the last 3 years now, when she passes away and George likely gets all those majority voting shares, he will make the decision to say, Kevin Warren, get the stadium built, start digging into the ground, and I'm going to start shopping the team. Where we know the Ryan family, whose name is on the Northwestern field, they get first rights, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, to buy the team. If they decide to not, then the Bears can go and sell to whatever opportunists might be out there. Which then I still question then the Ryan family, because they're on the board of directors for the Bears anyways. They're still a part of this, but they're a part of this like as a minority owner on the side. They're not making all these big decisions. But you wonder how much of these decisions are possibly being pushed by them. I'd hope they're taking bigger strides to be better and having more opportunistic chances. Maybe they're the ones that influence, we got to go get Caleb Williams and get rid of Justin. I still think that's a great move. I know Justin's played better than Caleb. I know Justin has done more than Caleb to this point now in this year. But what I've seen from Caleb Williams is a guy who can still be a great quarterback. I think it's just a matter now you got to get the right personnel in there to help coach this guy up. You got to get him ready. You got to get him prepared. They haven't done that. Hopefully they recognize the error in their ways, but who knows if they really will or not? Who knows if they really will reconcile with the idea that maybe they've made some major mistakes in trusting their gut and will allow Ryan Poles to be the man in charge. And hopefully Kevin Warren, in some regard, will be a part of the process too, because he is the director of football operations, not the director of Find My Stadium operations. I know that's like his main goal right now, but dude, you have to be a part of this conversation too, which he might be. But it sounds like it's kind of like Ryan Poles versus the ownership, where it should be Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren versus the ownership, if that's the way it's going to be. Sit down, tell these guys, you own the team, we respect that, but we are firing this guy and we are moving forward. If now's not the time to do it, when? Signal now change needs to come to the team, and they can believe maybe that they can be better, and perhaps this will be enough to make sure that Ben Johnson, who seems to be interested in wanting to be the Bears head coach, but continues to maintain that level of interest to be with the Bears. Because right now, there are teams that have 2 head coaching options open right now, and there will probably be more. And you don't want to give Ben Johnson any more options for his chance to move away from being in Chicago. It looks the most attractive, but who's to say he wants to deal with whatever Matt Eberflus has put up with to this point? food for thought, folks. And again, I'm going to say this, and I say this knowing that it's kind of goofy for everybody out there, but we are adults. If the Bears really are stressing you out this much that you can't sleep at night, that you can't eat, that you can't stop thinking about this whole thing, folks, there are 31 other teams in the NFL. There's over 1,000 players you can root for in the NFL. Find a player, find a team, and root for them if this team is driving you crazy. I promise you'll get a sense of relief, even if but for a moment, so that until the end of the season, you don't have to be concerned about the problems with the Bears. And I'm only saying that because I'm getting tired of listening to all the Bears fans complaining out there. You chose this team. You weren't born into it, no matter how much you want to believe, right? This is a thing where you can actually leave the fandom and not worry about it. This isn't being born into the mafia. This isn't a blood in, blood out thing, okay? This is you chose the team, you support the team, you suffer with the team. Well, I don't want to keep hearing your complaining when you knew this was always a possibility. Just keep that in mind, folks. I don't know what saves this franchise. I don't know if you can save this franchise at this point. This may be the moment where the Bears just kind of sink into the floor and go, well, do the best we can, but if we can't win these games, at least we get another high draft pick. And then you have to take a tackle. You have to draft a tackle. You have to get somebody to protect your quarterback. You have to invest in the offensive line. It's got to be priority number one. If that's not it, you got to get the edge rusher. It's got to be the edge rusher or the tackle. And the two best guys out there right now, or three best guys, or four best guys out there right now at tackle, Will Campbell of LSU, Kelvin Banks Jr. of Texas. At edge rusher, Abdul Carter from Penn State, and Nick Scorton from Texas A&M. Those are the top two guys. There's some other guys that might be in that mix, but those are the two guys that the Bears should be looking heavily at in order to change their fortune and their chances. But that's going to do it for the Bears Talk here, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, we want to hear from you guys. Let us know about the situation with the Chicago Bears. What are your thoughts? How do you think this thing changes? Who do you see as being right or wrong? How do you see this thing flipping about? We ask all the questions you want, please, about this. Comment down below. Let us know. We will answer your questions at a later date, either on a short fuse Friday, if not, possibly a Monday too, all depending on how the outcome of the Bears games go from here on out. Be interesting to watch. But when we come back, ladies and gentlemen, we're answering your fan questions, really sticking it here in the NBA. That's coming up next here on the X-Bomb Sports Live Show.
Man, I'm so hungry. I need somewhere to eat fast. I have no idea where to go.
Psst. Hola, me llamo El Taco de Taco. You know where to go for the amazing taste that'll have you craving more? Taco Bell.
All right, can I get 20 tacos, please?
You got it.
Thanks, Taco.
De nada.
Good. That's it. Eat the tacos.
Taco Bell. Live más.
Wear your best attitude. Feel the power. Run towards your goals. Make each footprint count. Believe in yourself. Mark the difference. Just do it.
Celsius, the fastest growing energy drink in America. 0 sugar, low calories, and 200 milligrams of caffeine. Celsius is the ideal drink for anyone who wants to get the most out of their day. 4 distinct flavors: orange, kiwi guava, wild berry, white peach, Drinking Celsius prior to fitness activities has proven to accelerate your metabolism, burn body fat, and provide essential energy. Celsius. Live fit. The official drink of Chad Podcast.
And welcome back, everybody, here to the X-Bomb Sports Live Show. I'm still Andrew Valentin. We just got done talking about the Bears. I hope everybody's been enjoying this one thus far. Again, guys, if you have any questions or comments, anything like that, of course, we want to hear from you guys, especially on this one, because it is time. Once again, we answer X-Bomb fan questions. That's right. Please, ladies and gentlemen, please send us your questions. That's at xbsportsofficial@gmail.com. We love to hear from you guys as always. It is always a pleasure to be able to read some of your questions and stuff. I don't have any goofy ones on this one, I'm sorry, just because of time constraints. And also, I'm very slap happy, so I'm also afraid of answering these questions exactly what would maybe be the outcome from those. But we do have some sports questions that I did want to get to, specifically with the NBA, because I know the NBA season has now been going on, so I wanted to be able to kind of talk about these a little bit more so. So I thought these would be good ones to be able to get into. So let's do that. And this first one, this comes from Danielle. Sorry. Wow. I'm sorry. My eyes are tired. So tired. I apologize. Danielle asked the question. She makes the statement. She says, I'm from Los Angeles. Lucky you. Seriously, lucky you. She says, I'm from Los Angeles, and I've always grown up a Lakers fan, but this Bronny James stuff has really drawn me to my last nerve, especially the news that has broken out. I was wondering, what are your thoughts on Bronny, and if there is a conspiracy against LeBron James where Bronny James is being used to somehow discredit LeBron James in any way. Whoa, man, talk about going down the conspiracy hole. I mean, I thought we went down those after the last two elections and stuff, but man, this is something. Now, I don't think there's any kind of like agenda against LeBron by using Bronny by any means. Look, for those that don't know, so Bronny James, son of LeBron James, drafted in the second round. He's been paid a fully guaranteed deal, about $4.4 million over 4 years, right? He is a rookie that is getting paid more money than anybody at that position, draft position before. And he already has started a couple of games, or not started, but he's played in a couple of Laker games for the season. And now the news has broken, according to Brian Windhorst, who is probably one of LeBron's biggest supporting advocates when it comes to the media, especially because of where he came from, being the guy that kind of broke the story with him a little bit in Cleveland. He has stated that apparently Bronny James is going to be a part-time G Leaguer, only going and playing with the G League team for the Lakers during the home games, where in away games, he will apparently be traveling with the Lakers, I guess, practicing with them, something in that some sort of degree. It's also then been reported, too, that apparently he won't ride coach, right? He won't ride with, coach or economy, whatever you call it, something like that, with the rest of the team on a regular flight. And, Brian Windhorst certainly had his statement on this, and he said, I don't like this at all one bit. And there's been a lot of people in the media that have made that stressed opinion, right? And look, Bronny James certainly has a level of privilege that I think for most of us, we tend to kind of maybe overlook, right? We don't necessarily look at Bronny James and feel that he's deserving of this role of being on the Lakers, only simply because he is the son of maybe the greatest NBA player of all time, arguably, don't bite my head off, okay? I mean, look, LeBron's made an incredible career. He's had this incredible, legacy that he's built for himself, and now Bronny James is expected to kind of be that kid that steps in and tries to maybe fill those shoes, which is impossible by his standards standards, of course, but by any means, it would be almost impossible, even if you were Cooper Flagg, who's dubbed a generational talent. That's still almost impossible for you to do. But for Bronny, because of who his father is, because of who he's the son of, because of the expectation he had of being this, can't miss prospect apparently in high school, where he wasn't even the best player on his own high school team, let alone in the state of California, he goes to USC. He plays coming off the bench. When he does start for Isaiah Collier for being injured, they are a worse team with him. And yet somehow he ends up being a highly paid second-round draft pick who gets probably the most comfortable look ever in NBA history, other than like a Draymond Green or somebody else who came out of the second round, and Isaiah Thomas maybe, small Isaiah Thomas, not Isaiah Thomas for the Pistons, Isaiah Thomas from Washington that played with the Kings and the Celtics and all those other teams, right? I mean, it speaks to the level of nepotism that exists in this point in the NBA, which there's a lot of NBA kids right now that are going into the league or going into college or are in the league right now. I mean, how many of them are stars? Not many. A lot of them are really kind of decent players. There's a couple that are certainly emerging stars or are at least good placeholder players or role players or something. But you don't find many guys that are coming off of NBA careers of their fathers that are anywhere near the legacy of LeBron James and being able to be successors. That's a very tall order to answer. That's a hard one to pin down. And for Bronny, I don't think I agree with everybody. This special treatment could kill any opportunity for him to develop by way of being able to communicate better with his teammates, having better cohesion with them, having better chemistry with them, right? So that the passes are smoother and the shots go better and the defense is better and everything kind of just runs more smoothly because you've spent time with the team. Now that you're spending part-time with them, you're not going to get to know these guys. Now that you're apparently not going to travel with them in the same way, you want to have the chance to be able to talk with them and discuss things. Not that everybody's always talking about basketball when they're together, but let's be honest. When you get to know a guy and you get to know a person and you work with them, that workflow ends up being very smooth, right? Conversations move naturally. The workflow just kind of starts to go, and you can just see it's a really nice ebb and flow. It speaks volumes. It really does. It speaks major volumes for what Bronny James is up against, and he's really just up against himself at this point. Or rather, his father's legacy. Because no matter what, he's going to be measured to that. And is that fair? Not really, because he's his own player. But that's going to be the measuring stick of Bronny James no matter where he goes. You're the son of LeBron James. You're expected to be on some sort of level NBA ready when you came out of college. You spent 1 year there at USC, you put up pedestrian numbers, and yet you still somehow get a payoff nowhere near the value of what anybody would pay for a kid like you. I'm sorry, it's the truth. I answered this question before. Well, what if you had a son that was playing in sports or in my position of being in radio, and I had, let's say this took off, when it takes off, right? And I have my own company, production company, and my son says, Dad, I want to get into production. I want to be in television and radio and all that stuff. I would make the suggestion, I'd say, okay, I will help you get there however I can, but I need you to put in the work and get it done. Ultimately, it's going to come down to you, my spawn, if you will. You have to achieve and build your own legacy. You have to create your own path, right? I can't remember my quote book's over there or whatever, but there's a quote I've written down and I've read many a times, and it's one that is along the lines of, don't follow the path that's already been made. Go your way and create your own path and leave a trail for others. That's not the exact quote, but that's kind of what I would assume Bronny should be aiming more for instead of what it feels like, which is you're kind of riding off your father's coattails in the hopes that at some point you will develop and you will be good enough to be able to get into the NBA and be on a squad, particularly with the Lakers. But at this point, he feels like a sideshow. He feels like one of those guys that you just use to kind of sell the name. And at that point, what good is he to you other than just to kind of be a quick cash-in buck? And that's not what you want to be as a player, but that seems to be something he seems okay with, unless he's not, and he just doesn't seem to understand the role that he's potentially playing. And I'm not saying that's what the Lakers are doing, but that's something that needs to be addressed and acknowledged. I don't like it. I've never been a fan of nepotism. I've never had nepotism go my way ever once before. I've also never been in that position where I've had family privilege enough to be able to do that necessarily. So I really couldn't say I have that experience. And I don't blame people who would take that. Like, I get it. Easy jobs, whatever, fine. But I respect those that at least are able to work hard to get there, to earn it. And like, your father hires you, but at least you have the work experience to say, I know the business, therefore I'm getting hired, right? Or your mother or whoever it is in charge. I can respect that totally. When it's just given to you just because it's a legacy thing, if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to run it into the ground, right? That's all. That's really all it is coming down to. Bronny just needs to know what he's doing. Simple as that. Thank you, Danielle, for the question. I appreciate it. And this next one, this was a collective. I didn't have any one particular person, but, I answer questions a lot of times on repeat, just kind of answering questions either because, I've been at this now for 7 years. Geez. And I've answered these questions quite a bit, and maybe new listeners haven't heard the answers, or maybe my answer has changed since then, right? Well, this collective question came from a bunch of people asking about the NBA's drop in viewership, right? And this kind of stems back over since last year, where the NBA saw a slight gradual drop in its viewership, and now, this season, it kind of tapped off because somebody asked me the question of viewership's off in the NBA, what gives? And that's essentially what I'm getting at is, what's the biggest reason for the NBA's drop off in viewership? What's been the biggest thing? Well, I love my dad to death, but he sends me these videos every once in a while, and he sent me one where a guy was ranting and raving about that exact thing because we were talking about how people were asking me that question. And it was a guy who was going, it's the 90s were better, and three-point shooting's terrible all the time, and blah, blah. First off, understand this. Because I'm going to just get right to it. Guys like him who are ranting and raving, and I don't know how old this guy is, but, you call them old heads, right? Now, if anybody's ever really heard that term, old heads. Old heads are guys that I tend to describe, and I don't know the exact definition of it, but I tend to describe those guys as people who, particularly men especially, but they are people in general who are keepers of the past, right? Or they feel like they are keepers of the past, who need to hold the almighty key to locking and unlocking the past and why it was so great, right? Hey, this is why the 80s was so great. Here's why the 90s was so great. And that's really what this guy was kind of going off about. Here's why this generation stinks and why the past generation was so good. And that's why NBA viewership is down. NBA viewership is down for a number of reasons. Now, that's one of them, but I think that's on the minimal side. One of the big reasons is, hey, folks, do you know what year it is? It's 2024. Do you know what we have in our lives now? This. We have all of these different sources of media. So why is viewership down? Maybe because a lot of people aren't watching TV. They're watching on their laptops. They're watching on streaming sites that don't really keep record of the number of people watching said game. They don't really give those numbers out, right? I mean, it is a transformative process when it comes to generational gap after generational gap where people are changing the mold of how they watch sports, right? In the 90s, people went to games and they watched it on TV. And then all of a sudden, the internet came abuzz, and then streaming sites became a thing, and now people are watching them all over the place, right? You're watching them all over your laptop, you're watching them on your phone, and now it's harder to kind of measure those outputs. And then here on top of all of that too, folks, right? The attention span of many of us have kind of changed, right? How many of us can sit through 82 games in an NBA season and watch every single game? How many of us can do that for a baseball game? How many of us can do that for an NHL game? I'm sure you probably can, or you think you can. But it's a lot easier to do what? Watch a football season because it's 17 games. Watch a college season because it's 16, 17 games now itself with the extended playoffs, give or take, whatever it's going to be now, right? It's a lot easier to watch that than watch, 50 plus games of the year. Instead, more people watch highlights now on the internet because they're busy more often, because maybe they have lives, families, whatever the case is, something gets in the way. So now I can't go back and watch the whole game. I really don't want to. Let me watch the highlights. That's how I'm going to get my game on. And then, okay, here comes playoff time. Okay, now I'm going to start watching. That you can see that. You can see viewership has jumped up majority of the time in sports, like over the last 5 years. It's jumped up a majority of the time when playoffs come around. The only one that has stayed fairly consistent for the most part has been the NFL and college football. Why? Because the seasons aren't so taxing. They aren't so long. And people, and that's America's sport at this point. Right? Everybody loves football. Or most people love football, I should say. So it's, if your reasoning is, well, because it was better back in the day, well, look, you can say that, but that's because you liked it back, and that was when you fell in love with it. I didn't get into basketball around the time Jordan was still around, and he was still around winning championships when I was alive. I got into sports when I got into high school, or just before high school, and I was watching Kobe Bryant and LeBron James and Tim Duncan and all these other guys in their primes or coming into their primes as young stars, right? Winning championships, being the best guys in the world. And that's when I fell in love with the NBA especially. I didn't fall in love with it because of Jordan. I fell in love with it because of these other guys that were in the league, right? And then through history, through looking back in the lens, you can see how good those guys were. And then you fall in love with them too. But my respect always holds to during the 2000s is when I fell in love with sports. We got a guy here who's just about to turn 21, which is a scary, scary thought that he's about to turn 21. But when he probably came into sports, Scotty, when did you come into sports? When did you fall in love with sports? Okay, 2008, 2005, around that time. Because why? Tim Tebow. College football. You watched it because it's college football. It's Florida football. Who wouldn't want to watch Tim Tebow? He's an electrifying guy. Florida was a really good team at that point, right? National championships. Football is a very easy sport to watch at that point because it's 12 games, 13 with a bowl game, 14 if you add the conference championship and a bowl game, right? And it's one day. It's one day. It's Sunday or Friday or Saturday or Monday or Thursday. But when you really add those up, there are a lot of days. I know they throw on Fridays because of high school football. But yes. Or a baseball game in the middle of the day on a work day on a Wednesday, when you have even then when a playoff game, right? How many people can really watch a playoff game when you're at the office at 12 o'clock in the afternoon? Not a lot of people can. Some offices will let you do that. I know some, though, that will never let people do that ever. Those are not places you want to work if you want to be in sports media, by the way. But that's the thing, is that you have to understand if you're asking that argument. Man, it varies in so many different efforts, right? For every sport, there is a different variant that plays into it, And I could sit here and we could talk about that all day, but we don't have the time for that. But the basic, what's the biggest reason for the NBA's drop-off? I think it's just a matter of just the times have changed. And it's just the basic coverage of just saying, look, distractions now exist where you can now, I'm watching a game while listening to a movie, playing a video game, and checking my phone. Am I really watching the game? Probably not. It's on. I'm listening. But at the same time, I could easily shift over to the movie and say, forget the game if I don't enjoy it. So I think it's just a matter of, look, evolution has taken place. The transformation of how we absorb media is very needs to be acknowledged and needs to be apparent, because 50 years from now, it's probably going to be something different, right? We could all have microchips in our brain that are just, spooning it into our eyes or whatever, so we can see what's going on through the lenses in our eyes. I don't know how the future's going to work. None of us do. But we don't know, and that's the thing, right? And then we're going to say, oh, man, people are so distracted now than they were back in 2024. For me, it really just comes down to, what's the biggest reason? There's just a gap. There's just a gap in how we consume media, because times change and the consumer changes, right? Because culture changes. It's time. Time's the biggest reason. That's all it is. Yes, Scotty, final words?
So I wanted to ask, do you think a lot of that has to do with how your phone looks? Because you look at hockey, football, basketball, they're all sports that work to that left to right or right to left dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
You look at like baseball, it's kind of perfect for your phone. You can keep the pitcher and home plate in the same shot. Do you think there's that kind of dynamic too? And you look at UFC, you can be close in on certain fighters, or racing, you can be close in on certain cars.
Yeah.
Of
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's not just the phone, it's the laptop too. It's the iPad, right? I mean, you take all of that into account. It's the aspect ratio of how things fit into your screen, because how much are you going to be willing to pay attention when things are maybe moving more fastly, or if they're taking their time, right? I mean, again, it all depends on the person, but that absolutely can play an effect into how people are gauging their stuff. I mean, I don't have the study in front of me, but I remember a study was done in the late 90s into the 2000s where they said the average attention span of children at age 4, starting at age 4, all the way to the teenager being 18, the average attention span for them was about 15 seconds in that time period, right? Since then, it has shifted to almost 5.5 seconds. And it might be less by now, because that was about 2020, I think, when that study was published last. So we could be at 3 seconds. We could be at 2 seconds. I mean, how fast do we scroll through our phones now, right? How fast are you to click off a movie if it's not interesting, or a TV show if it's not interesting? I'll be honest, I do it all the time. If you got maybe like 5 minutes to 10 minutes to hook me in, and then I will turn it off if I don't like it. To me, I think time is, you want to say the biggest reason? I think it's just time. We have evolved with our technology on how we consume the media. And that's, I think, the biggest thing here. So take it for how you will. Love it or hate it, no matter what. This is the evolution of sports as it is. So that's going to do it for the question parts. Thank you so much for the questions, guys. I just thank you, Danielle, for the question about Bronny and all that stuff. And thank you guys, as always, too, for the questions, too. I promise, bless you, we will get into far more questions, goofier stuff again. I promise that will be coming up in later episodes. Just wanted to kind of cram this stuff out while we can. But, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for our show. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. We're about to bounce out of here. But as always, if you want to follow us anymore, please make sure to subscribe, follow, like us here on the YouTube side. That's youtube.com/xbombsports. And that's twitch.tv/xbombsports. If you want to follow us anymore on our social media, we're at xbombsports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you guys have any more questions or comments and things like that, of course, as always, xbsportsofficial@gmail.com. And if you want to follow myself, I'm at DFluffy Guru on Twitter. I'm also at Boom Crew Captain on Instagram too. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, here coming up in about a couple minutes or so, we're going to have ourselves a little Bad Karma Wrestling. Our boys Nick Johnson, No Gimmicks, and our man David Double D Dykstra. They're going to be breaking down all the big news that's coming down in the WWE. And David's got some fun stuff to talk about, I think, because we already talked about it a little bit this week as it was. But we're guys, be prepared, because this is going to be a big week for wrestling. There's a lot of stuff going down. So be on the lookout for that. That's going to be a lot of fun there, too, ladies and gentlemen. And that's coming up next here. And, of course, as always, too, check out Blow the Whistle every Monday. And now every Wednesday. We've shifted back to every Wednesday just because of time constraints. It's myself, David Dykstra, Nick Johnson, and, of course, Tyler Butterball. And occasionally, sometimes we'll have Scotty Kiefer on once in a while, if we want to. But as always, ladies and gentlemen, just make sure to go check that out. Follow him. That's at Blow T Whistle 1 on all the social media, and it's of course at sportstownchicago.com. Again, every Monday and Wednesday at 2:00. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all so much for watching. We will see you guys next Monday. And as always, much love. Peace out, Boom Crew.